Hi, welcome to the Caucus for Women in Statistics 50th Anniversary Presidential Interview Series. As a part of our celebration for our 50 years in 2021, we're interviewing our past presidents. This interview is of our 1986 President Arlene Ashe, and she's being interviewed by Lee Tang.
So thank you, Dr. Ashe, for your time to take this invitation to agree to do this interview with us. So we have several questions that we would like to share with our CWS audience. And we'll start with some of the questions related to the history of CWS and your past experience with it. And then we are going to switch gears to talk more about what challenges or what opportunities the female statisticians are facing or were facing before and now are facing, maybe some of the new ones. The first question that I have is that when you were the CWS president, do you have any pressing issue that you would like to share? If you recall that.
Okay, so we're talking about 1986. So I was 40 years old, and I hadn't been very involved, so I'm 74 now. And I hadn't really been involved with the caucus before I was asked if I would be willing to run. And the people who were searching for a slate said, you know, we really think we need to reach out and find new people to, you know, to grow the people who are involved, and would you be willing to run for president? And I said, okay, I assume I won't win. Somebody who people know better will vote for. But anyway, I wrote up my, and I think that sort of reflects that it was a small group and it was still fairly early on, and you know, I think there's a lot. It would be a lot less likely that someone totally uninvolved got to be elected president now. And so to my surprise, I was elected, and I thought, well, I should take this seriously, right? I should find out what I should do, what I'm supposed to do, what I can do. And I was very lucky in that the person who had been president before me was Nancy Gordon. And I think at that time I didn't know Nancy. I think I got to know her because I called her up and I asked for her help at, well, how do you do this? What am I supposed to do? And so she's a very organized person. Even then, I think she had quite a few very high responsibility jobs. She's since gone on to have big jobs with the Congressional Budget Office and the Census Bureau, and she really thinks about how you make an organization run well. And we were still in that stage where we didn't have all our protocols in order, and there were so many things to keep track of. She had put together a book of what's due when, and who are you supposed to report to, and what are the obligations, and so that was incredibly useful. Otherwise I was totally lost, right? And I realized that some of the things that I was supposed to do included helping to organize a scientific session at the meetings. And I went to my advisor, a very nice man from Iran, and I said to him, well, what advice do you have to give me about how to do this? And he said, my advice is that whatever you do, you should do it well. You should take it seriously, and you should do it well. And that's the best way to advance the cause of women, is to, do your job really well. And so I remember at that time, I thought about what would be something that was of interest to women, but also of interest to everybody, and that would be the kind of session that would really attract a lot of attention. And I found someone who would talk about issues associated with having a successful pregnancy when the woman was older. And I thought that's a problem that many of us face, and that will be interesting. And we did have a lot of people who attended that session and seemed to like it. So that was sort of a principle that I had, that I should try hard to do things that were perhaps of special interest to women. In some sense, men's lives often meant they didn't have to deal with this, but women's life usually meant they did have to deal with it. So, so there were so many things like this. There were how to deal with dual careers. Again, some men were married to professional women, but most professional women are married to professional men. And so that seemed to be the sort of thing that was of interest. And another thing that we took on was trying to make it a regular thing that at the statistical meetings that there would be childcare. Again, it's not men have children, but making sure that we had childcare at the meetings was something that was a more urgent and pressing answer for a question for more women. Another thing that I did is we had a newsletter. I thought I ought to be scouring whatever resources I can, and the internet wasn't in 1986 what it is right now, but I ought to find opportunities for women and, for members of the caucus, some of whom were not women, and make people aware that there were these opportunities. And as it turned out, that was very good for me because I came across an announcement that there was a travel scholarship that was available for I just continued talking this time. There was a travel scholarship that was available for a woman to attend a Women in Science in the Developing Countries conference in Vietnam, and to apply for a travel scholarship to go attend that conference and to give lectures in Vietnam. That was one of many things that I found that I put out in the newsletter and said, here's something you can apply for. And, but I looked at it and I said, well, I could apply for that. So I did, and I did win that scholarship, and I did go to Vietnam, and I did give lectures there. And I ended up also able to go to Cambodia, and
wow.
It was really interesting and wonderful. So that wasn't the first time that this young girl from a modest background growing up in New England got to go overseas, but it was a continuation of when I graduated from college, I had taken advantage of the opportunity to go into the Peace Corps. And I had gone to the Philippines, where I had a real plum assignment. I was able to teach mathematics, some of it very elementary, but some of it quite sophisticated. I had to learn things in order to teach it at a scholarship university in the Southern Philippines. So I kind of liked the idea that I was able to go back to Asia. And I, at another time, I got another opportunity to go back to Vietnam and to visit there again. So I really developed a taste for visiting other countries, but not just as a tourist, as a scientist. I found that it was really neat that you were hosted by scientist colleagues. They showed you around. it was a very different way to see countries than to go as a tourist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very, I think that's a very unique experience. Did you enjoy your visit and a stay in Asia? The culture is very different, I believe, and
Yeah, well,
the education environment was different, right?
well, I think one thing about me is that I'm a happy person. So I've enjoyed almost everything I've ever done. So I usually think, well, that means that I should choose wisely. I should choose things that are more worthwhile, because I'll enjoy whatever I'm doing, but maybe if I'm doing something that that helps others or that expands my world, maybe that's something I should aim for. And so when I went to the Philippines, I mean, I was a young woman. I was 21 when I graduated from college, and it was 2 years on the other side of the world. And my parents were a little, oh my God, my baby's leaving us, you know, and they actually, once during my 2 years, they did a round the world trip and they visited me in the Philippines. But it was a wonderful thing to do. It was a wonderful thing to do because I was so unaware of how particular the world I grew up in was. I mean, it wasn't just, you know, my family with its particular background in Stamford, Connecticut. And I sort of, by the time I had gotten through college in Boston, I knew a little bit more about other families and the United States. And yet there were so many things that we all took for granted that I never thought about. I just never thought about it. It's like, you know, they say the fish doesn't know it's in the water. Because the water is the world. And so when I went to the Philippines, there were things that I observed that surprised me, and it would cause me to think. And I would see people who were being treated very badly in terms of the ways in which they were scammed or taken advantage of. And I would say, how can they put up with that? And I thought, well, what does it mean? What is it? That's a stupid thing. I mean, they live here. They have to figure. These are the things they have to deal with. We all, you know, you don't just say, I'm leaving this, I'm out of here, I'm leaving this world, I don't like this, right? You would really, golly, I'm watching my, my picture is very disjointed from, you know, in time from when I'm speaking, but I'll try to ignore that. So I just, you know, I would say, why do people do things like this? I would see that if you had a small errand to run somewhere across campus, you would never ever see a girl going alone. She'd always have a friend and the two would go together. And I thought, you know, why did they do that? That's so strange. You know, I mean, only one of them had any business to do. I found that some of my students behaved in a way which I considered to be cheating, but they considered that if you knew something and your friend asked you, it would be a violation of your friendship to not help them. Of course you would help your friend. And I thought, oh, well, that's interesting. You know, that's different. My students were terrific. They were some of the best students I've ever had. They were young. They came to college at 16. I was only just turned 22. And
wow.
And they had all scored in the top 5% of a nationally administered exam. And many of them were from very, very poor families. Some were from fairly well-off families. But you know, it might be their first time away from home from a very tiny village. And it was scary to come to where we were for school. And I just learned a lot. I learned a lot by watching and thinking about the fact that people's lives were very different in pretty profound ways from what my life had been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's very interesting, and to me, I think that's very unique kind of experience. And speaking of your CWS, when you were the leader of the CWS, you said that you're always a happy person. So I believe this is not very difficult to answer. Do you still remember any unforgettable or happy or favorite memories from when you served as the president for the organization? And do you still remember some of the committee members who impressed you, or some of the CWS members who were not necessarily executive committee members, just the regular members?
Well, it's actually a hard question for me to answer. I mean, if you're happy all the time, it's hard to remember particular things you're happy with. But many of the friends that I came to have, I don't really remember whether I met them at that time or later. I just don't remember. So, you know, mm-hmm. So the friendship with Nancy has always, you know, has been a continuing friendship to this day. And, mm-hmm. You know, I think it's really special to have friends who are really friends. You enjoy them, you know, to have dinner together, you enjoy them in the way that you would enjoy any friendship, but who are also professional colleagues. And you can talk about your work and they will give you valuable different insights. So as I said, I had never really managed anything, and Nancy was already at that time a very accomplished manager. And so she could help me that way. And over the years, she could teach me things. I think that it was around that time, but I'm not sure, that I met Elizabeth Margushes, and we became good friends and, you know, had the same, we often roomed together at the meetings. And we became, again, that kind of mixed friendship, which I hold so valuable, that that someone who, you know, you remember each other's birthdays, you know, you have a regular friendship, but you also have this connection through having work that is sufficiently closely related that you can be helpful to each other.
Yeah, that's great. And how long did you serve as the president of CWS?
So I think, I think that at that time, the norm was one president, 1 year. I couldn't swear to it that that's true, but later on there was a calendar of presidents of the Caucus of Women's Statistics. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but they did 1 month for each of 12 of us. And I was Miss September 19, with the date 1986. So I think it was just 1 year.
I see. And did you enjoy it overall? And you found that experience beneficial for your career development and to impact more people, in particular female statisticians?
Yeah, I think that the whole thing, you know, not necessarily specifically being the president, but but developing the set of relationships that, that you made that way. I'm trying right now to remember her name, but you know, not everybody there was from academia. And we had people who were giving me a different perspective, you know, from their work in business. And we had some friendly disagreements about how people dressed. So this woman who was a statistician in industry thought that women professionals should dress professionally. And that meant, for instance, they should wear high heels. And now this, I don't think there's anybody now who thinks that you can't be taken seriously without wearing high heels. But we actually had one of the brochures in which the woman statistician silhouette had high heels, and we had a real debate about that, and we cut it down so that there was a little heel, but not a high heel. And I mean, when I was younger, I had worn these 4-inch spike heels, but they're painful. So I agree. Yeah. And there really has been, but the whole question, really, this is an important question of how you look. And when I went to the Philippines, I was just out of college. I had been at Radcliffe. It was a place where we were kind of like, you know, doesn't matter how we dress, how we look, it's the quality of our mind and what we do and things like that. And, you know, I graduated in 1967. So it was a political time. And I didn't comb my hair very much. I didn't care very much about how I dressed. And then one day, a colleague in the Philippines, a young woman teacher who was in the same women teachers dorm that I was in, said to me something about, she observed that I didn't dress very well. I think she may have said it a little more kindly, or maybe not. And then she said, I understand that, fundamentally, she said, I understand we're not that important to you. When the landlord goes, when the peasant goes to visit the landlord, the peasant puts on his best clothes. And when the landlord comes out to see the peasant, the landlord comes out in his slippers and robe and doesn't care, because it signals that he doesn't have that much respect for. And I thought, oh my goodness, I never thought about that. And it really did cause me to think very differently about how I dressed, and to think that if others are going to view how I dress as a sign of my respect or lack of respect for them, then it whatever I think about the signal that I was trying to send, which is I care about the quality of my mind and my leadership and my ideas, and not so much about spending time on how I looked, that that sent the wrong message. And that, you know, if you said to me, somebody above me will think badly of you because you don't pay as much attention to your hair as you should, I might not have paid as much attention. But what this woman said to me in the Philippines really affected me, and it definitely changed the way I thought about how I dressed, but it didn't make me want to wear high heels at work.
Yeah, I don't like high heels either. I still, since I started to work, maybe 10 years ago, I started to learn to wear those, because I never wore those when I was younger, where I was always in sneakers. I started to learn. And after 10 years, I have to say that I'm still trying to learn. I'm not very good at wearing those heels. And most of the time I just dress myself in a comfortable way instead of spending a lot of time thinking that how I will look better or more beautiful. So, but I think that's a very, the story just shared made me think too. Although maybe some people think the outfit or the dress code, what professionals wear is a minor thing, but the story just shared made me think a little bit more deeply than what I usually regard as this.
The other thing is you can dress comfortably. There's nothing to keep. So for this interview, I put on a nice tunic. I do like earrings, and one thing about earrings is you can have lots of them. They're inexpensive, and you can change your look all the time, and that's fun. Yeah. And the other thing is like the tension between dresses and pants. Okay, so when I was growing up, women were often told that if they had a professional job, if you're a teacher at the school, you have to wear a dress. Well, you know, it's cold here in New England in the winter, and dresses are often fairly uncomfortable. And a friend of mine developed the exact right response, which was, okay, I'll wear a dress and I'll wear pants. So a friend of mine who's Indian said that she sort of liked the idea. So now I'm having trouble with my background, let's see. But she liked the idea that now we wear tunics over pants, which is an Indian way of dressing. And it's extremely comfortable. And you can wear lovely, comfortable clothes, and you can be professionally put together. And so I think that way of saying, you know, I'm not going to spend my life and my money and all that, spending an enormous amount of time making myself a fashion model, but I can enjoy dressing up and still be very, very comfortable.
Yeah, I agree. And thanks for sharing that story. And that's a beautiful top. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. So if you do not mind, I will ask a couple questions about your personal career path. And the first one is that how you ended up becoming a statistician.
Okay. So, so I'm the youngest of 3 children. And my 2 older brothers are 2 years older and 4 years older than that, 6 years older than me. And there was a gap in my family because of the Second World War. So I was born in 1946, and my oldest brother was born in 1940. And so I'm the first wave of the baby boomers, the people who were born when the war was over. And I was welcomed into the family. I was made to feel as if everybody thought it was nice that there was a girl at the end of the family, and in particular, the oldest of my siblings took me under his wing, and he would teach me the math that he was learning.
Okay.
So when one summer when I was like maybe in 6th grade, he taught me how to derive the solution to the general quadratic equation. You know, the y equals ax plus, a plus b x squared plus c, anyway. Plus bx plus cx squared. And and of course, it was kind of hard for, maybe it was between 5th and 6th grade, somewhere around there. But he would pay attention to me, and first we worked with just numbers, and then he said, it looks like you kind of have this. Why don't you try doing it in the general way with A, B, and C as the coefficients instead of, so y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. How do you solve that, and how do you write the solution in a general way for any A, B, and C? And I remember that it was hard, that I made mistakes. I didn't, whereas I'd gotten to the point where you give me any set of numbers, I knew how to deal with it, but I just was having trouble with this. And he would just patiently come back and find where I had gone astray and help put me on the right path and let me go until I went astray again. And by the time that we were done with it, I had really learned how to do it. And I was good. I could practically do it like you might recite a poem. It was just came very naturally, and it was just a skill I had to go from that original equation to the solutions. The next year, our teacher showed it to us in algebra. I don't know, next year or the year after that. And he was a very strange man. Later, I sort of came to understand that he was kind of resentful of us kids, that he was just a junior high school math teacher, but he thought we were gonna, we came from privileged backgrounds and we were gonna have the world that he didn't necessarily have. And I didn't come from a privileged background in the sense of my family had very modest financial situation, but I did come up from a privileged background in that I'm Jewish. Education was considered very important. The family was very tight and cohesive. I felt welcomed and encouraged because I had older siblings, who were learning to read when I wasn't. I asked for, I wanted to learn how to read when they were learning how to read. So I was kind of pulled up ahead of myself by the fact that the family was very supportive and was very academic. My father would take me to the library if we needed to do something at the library. No. So it's interesting when you say, did you come from a privileged background? There are a variety of different ways in which you could be privileged. Although we had very little money to spare, my nephew reminds me that I should never say we grew up poor, because poor means, you have instability in your life for lack of money. And that certainly was never true of our situation. I know my parents stayed up late at night figuring out how to make sure that we didn't experience any important problems due to the struggle that they had to put the money together. But they did that, and I was protected from any kind of instability due to lack of money. And so anyway, he, in a rather snarky way, said, well, you all are so smart. You think you know how to do this now. Why don't you try this one? And he wrote out the general form of the equation. And I looked at it and I kind of smiled, and I took out my pencil and I just did it. And he came back the next day and he said, you all think you're so smart. Well, only one person got this. And then he said, I know that you're the kind of people who, if you don't know something, you're really going to work on it. So I'm going to give you another chance. And he left us to do it a second time. And the second time I was the only one who got it. And, I think it was pretty mean of him. But for me, it established my reputation as the math whiz. And of course, that has two consequences. Other people view you as the math whiz, and you view yourself as the math whiz. So I knew that I didn't have any magnificent special talent that my classmates didn't have. But I also was a little cagey. I didn't tell them how I knew. I just let them think that I was really smart. And the other thing is that as I went on, I felt I had this reputation to preserve. So if there was something that needed to be learned that was math, I would really work at it. Whereas if there were things that I had sort of accepted, oh, nobody in my family is very good at music, I wouldn't really work at it because I didn't think that that was my special talent or something like that. So for better and worse, I think that it happened to me, as it happens to many people, that they develop in a certain way, which seems to follow their natural talent, but actually there's a more prosaic explanation for how they ended up going in that direction.
Yeah, that's that's very interesting. Yeah, so you found yourself when he used that kind of method to, you can say, to inspire you or encourage or to push you to pursue more maths. And did you find yourself really interested in those questions, where it was more like you wanted to prove you had talents in math? And which way was, or it's a combination, I guess?
I think it's a little hard to separate. My experience is that if I sat down and worked hard at things, I could usually work them out. I never thought that my abilities suggested that I had some rare skill. I just considered myself to be a person with a good background, who was willing to work, who was curious, who liked to solve problems. And I will say that in my life, there have been some math problems. There's one in particular I can remember. I had gone to University of California, Berkeley to spend the summer working with a senior person who had agreed to mentor me. And I had been working to try to understand a paper. It was after I'd finished my doctorate. And I woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning after maybe several weeks of just getting stuck at this place. Just couldn't understand it. And I woke up and I said, I see it. I know how it's going to go. I've seen how it's going to work. It actually took me some time to work out all the details, but I was so excited. It was pretty early in the morning. The household where I was staying was not up, and we were staying in the Berkeley Hills. So the first thing I did is I called my parents, neither of whom are mathematicians, although all three of their kids are. And they'd look at each other and say, where do these kids come from? But I called them and I said, I just had to share with you my excitement. I just solved this problem that I've been working on for weeks. And it's absolutely the right way to look at this problem. It's very, very exciting. So they were very happy for me. I was happy to have someone I could tell. And I put on my sneakers and I ran up to Inspiration Point at the top of the Berkeley Hills. And I was so excited to, see the sunrise and to feel like I just solved this problem. And just because I was bursting with enthusiasm about how exciting this was, there was an older man who was running up the hill. And I said, can I tell you about this thing that I just solved? He said, okay. And he was some sort of social scientist. And I was able to sort of explain what it was that I had done. And he said, that sounds pretty neat. And we ran up to Inspiration Point together. So as I said, a lot of different things can make me happy. And there is something very special about seeing the structure of something that you haven't seen before And what a lot of mathematicians will tell you is that the problem with being a mathematician is that you struggle and you struggle and struggle. And then when you see it, it's so clear and it's so simple. You say, why was I such a jerk that I didn't see it before? Why did it take me so long, you know? But I think that it really is true that if you work at things, even if you're not, you know, the most extraordinary mathematical mind of your generation, you can learn things and you can discover things and you can have all the pleasure of being a discoverer.
Yeah, I could sense your excitement even after so many years.
After all those years.
Yeah, virtually, but I could still feel your excitement at that moment. And your undergraduate major was math, or was stats?
So all my degrees, my bachelor's, my master's, and my PhD are in mathematics. And shortly after I got my doctorate in mathematics, it was after. It may have been at the time that I was finishing. No, it was at the time I was finishing I was working on my doctorate in mathematics. I had a very, I don't know, a traumatic life event, but it wasn't for me. My best friend from college committed suicide. And we now understand a little better what was going on. She had a pretty serious case of postpartum depression, which we just didn't know how to deal with. I think if she had made it through that period, I think she would be alive and happy today. But she had killed herself. And I had visited her. She was living in New York. I was in Chicago. I had visited her the month earlier, and I knew she wasn't happy. But I didn't know what to do about it. And I didn't understand then that you can die from being unhappy. I told you, I'm a happy person. The concept that you can die from being unhappy was just not one that I really had any experience with or background that would help me to really see that. And I'd been slogging my way to a PhD. I was doing it because I'd started it. I was doing it because in my family, I was told if I didn't finish it, I'd be a dropout. And I was doing it because I sort of embarked on it, and I felt like if I just keep at it, I'll get there, and then I'll be done with it. And it would be a bad thing to stop before I'm done with it. And I stepped back and I said, but I'm not happy with what I'm doing. A particular work that I've chosen, there was a reason for choosing it, but it doesn't lead to a career path that I think I really want. It was a pure mathematics degree, and I had become involved with the women's self-help health movement, and there were a bunch of anarchist radical women who were establishing self-help health clinics in Chicago that I'd gotten involved in. And I decided that I wanted to use my mathematical skills to help figure out how to do medicine better. I realized that there were many, many questions that came up about people's health, and that the way that data were collected would never really help to answer them very well. You know, woman would call and say, when I was younger, the following was what was going on with my body, and now it's different. And my doctor says, don't worry, both of those are within normal limits, but I see something going up over time. Does that mean anything that I should worry about? And I realized that nobody ever collected data that way. You know, everything was seen in the cross-sectional window of one visit with your doctor with very wide boundaries for what was normal, but nobody was paying attention. And I said, I think I think I could take this degree and I could use it, but I need to move into something different. And that's when I started talking to the statisticians and doing work with them. And sort of, it was the beginning of the path to UMass Medical School, where I am now.
I see. And after so many years being a statistician, what are the challenges you think that the female statisticians are likely to face? And do you have any advice or suggestions for our junior female statisticians in the organization?
Right, right. So I think a lot of the problems that women face are not so different from the problems that men face. I think that you really have to work at learning how to speak more forcefully. You have to, when I was in high school, I had a drama coach. I had a role in a play where I was sort of the heroine. And she said, Arlene, you are many things, but you are not sweet. And this heroine is supposed to be sweet. And if you're going to play this woman, you're going to have to act. And she said, nobody likes a high-pitched voice. You should learn to lower your voice. So a combination of taking that advice, of being in the Philippines where people understood me better if I spoke more slowly and clearly, if I simplified my language, if I really thought about how I wanted to look somebody in the eye and make sure that I was talking to them. I'm not talking for the purpose of hearing myself talk. I'm trying to watch to make sure that people hear. And I think that there's so many things that improve if you stop worrying about how you look to other people and you start concentrating on how well you're understanding and meeting the needs of other people. It just takes a lot of pressure off, right?
Yeah.
And you know, you have to have confidence that you're bringing value to the table, but you don't have to believe that you know everything. And the more you ask other people what their needs are, and you look at them and you think about how they answer you, and you think about how you can tailor what you do for them to what they objectively need and what they're looking for. And if what they're looking for isn't realistic, if you can help reset that. You know, I can understand that all you want me to do is a t-test, but so I don't know, I more and more, as a person who is likely to be the one who speaks a lot, who speaks first, I try to, you know, if someone asks me for advice, I might start by saying, and what do you think? You know, I like learn to shut my mouth. And
yeah, I'm like that too.
Yeah, and if they don't instantly answer, it's okay that there's a silence. You know, and what do you think? Let's wait to see you know, if encourage them to speak, because they may be shy, and let you if you just go on, but that's not really the best thing. And if you have a group of people together, it's not just one-on-one, you could say, and what the others think might be most helpful for this person. And then I do try to be a good listener and a summarizer. So in my family, almost everybody has terrible hearing, and I had great hearing. And so I would be an English to English translator, you know? And I do that a lot in meetings. I will say, okay, what I've heard is this, this, and that. Did I get it right? Sometimes as a senior person in a lecture where I don't think everybody's following, I will say, forgive me, I want to make sure I've got this right. What you're saying is blah, blah, blah. Did I get it? You know, and then everybody gets it. Right? Otherwise, it's all just washing over and everybody's lost.
Yeah, that's true. That's exactly true, I think.
Saudi, those are...
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much for sharing the advice. I think that's very informative and very helpful, in particular for some of the junior female statisticians when they're just starting to pursue a professional career, and they sometimes have concerns when they should speak, when they should keep silent, or whether they keep silent for too long, or they have a lot of concerns or worries.
So when you go into a meeting and you are responsible for presenting material, I take it very, very seriously. I would put together a packet. And you know, the packet would have a top page which would say, you know, there's attachments A, B, C, D, and E, and here's what each of them does. And I want to walk you through it. And I learned this the hard way. I had gone into meetings where there was just a whole bunch of output, and I wasn't really prepared to tell people what it meant or to help them interpret it. And I felt like a jerk. Right?
Yeah, that's very informative, I think. We are almost running over time. So my last question before we close today's interview is that, do you have any last minute thing to share, either with our either with the CWS or with the female statisticians, or do you have any vision you would like to share for the CWS going forward, or for females to pursue a career in this field?
So I think my advice is that if you think of yourself as a woman with a career that will span many decades, you should embrace the idea that your life is integrated, that you're a human being, and that the work that you do should be pleasurable, because you work with good people, you see your friends. A friend of mine once gave me the advice, if you find out that somebody's a jerk, just don't work with them again. Don't work with jerks. Don't work with jerks. and the other thing is to be patient, to understand that if you are going to do something that's important, it will take a while. And if at the end of your life you can say, here are 2 or 3 things that matter, that I involved myself in, that are different and better because of the work that I did, that's a lot.
Yeah, that's exactly true. Yeah. But if I follow up with what you just said, if you look back in your career, what are those 2 or 3 critical things that you reached? You think they are impactful? They're important work.
So one thing that I worked on that was very important, is that my group did the foundational work for an area of a discipline within health studies called risk adjustment. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we started, the actuaries thought that it was crazy for us to analyze individual level data to make predictions about how much people would be likely to cost and what the outcomes of their care would be likely to be, because they were very happy with their age, sex, demographic adjustments. And they just thought what we did was silly. And our early papers are in the foundational list of what health actuaries are expected to know today. So we've actually changed the way the world looks at how you manage healthcare systems. So that's a big one.
Yeah, you must be very proud of that.
I'm very happy. I'm really very happy. It is important work, and it was foundational. I did something very specific in Massachusetts. Years ago, I was putting a fair amount of time into being an expert witness on discrimination in pay. And I was the expert witness who worked with a very good lawyer. Unfortunately, she died of cancer, but we won $11 million in upgrades in pay for the women teachers of the state and community college system. And I know some older women who have said to me, my retirement is comfortable because of the work that you did. So.
Wow, that's I would say, yeah. That's a very impactful work. It's not just a research project or academia project. It's more like that. It links with a critical social issue, and it helps people to overcome that with solid, maybe data evidence or with solid evidence that you can extract from by using your skills. That's amazing. I have to say, I don't know which word I should use, but that's
so I think that I regret that I didn't teach other people to do that. When Elizabeth Scott got involved in understanding pay equity for women, she developed a kit to show other people how they could examine pay equity. I didn't really produce any lasting products. I didn't teach others to do this. It was just work that I did outside of my regular academic work. And I kind of regret that I didn't leave more of a legacy. And at some point I decided, if I really care about having an impact in healthcare, then I have to put this aside. And I also came to feel that winning a settlement in court, the forces that caused women's salaries to end up being lower than men's were very powerful, and they would reassert themselves after a few years after your court case. And I just decided I didn't want to do that anymore, that I would concentrate on working in healthcare.
I see, but that's still, to me, that sounds a very large, a huge accomplishment. I would have to admit that I truly admire your work in that area.
So the one other thing I would say is that there are other things which I am equally proud of that are smaller on the world scale, but they are involved with having students or junior faculty who have been through very, very tough times in their life. And in at least 2 distinct instances, I worked with people, I got them over that, I got them to the place where they were able to do wonderful work on their own. And I would say I take as much pleasure in seeing them do that as in anything else I've ever done. So
I'm kicked out.
You'll have it on the recording.
Yeah, thank you so much. I don't know what happened, but I have been, I was kicked out by Zoom. I guess Zoom, our institution is so funny that our institution I think only has a group license with WebEx and has a very restricted license with Zoom. So we seldom use Zoom. I guess that's why Zoom doesn't like me either.
I don't know. I don't. But I wouldn't worry about it. I think you've got what you need.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I don't want to take too much of your extra time. And I will close today's interview. And thank you very much, Dr. Ash. It's very nice it's very nice of knowing your career path and your experience with CWS and your personal stories. I love those. And they also make me to think more deeply about some of the issues you mentioned. Some of the historical issues like the women's outfit, I think they still exist to some degree, even nowadays.
I think so.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time. Yeah, I forgot to introduce myself when I first entered this room. So my name is Lee. I'm currently working, volunteering to help with the organization of the 50th anniversary for CWS. And I work at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital as a biostatistician. It's almost 9 years since I have started to work there.
And so where is that? Where are you in geographically?
It's in Memphis, Tennessee. It's in Central South. Have you been to this area before?
Not recently, but yes, I have been to Memphis.
Yeah.
And what is your role? What kind of group do you work in?
So I work. So I'm a associate. It's equivalent like as a associate professor, but we call it associate member. So I work in the Department of Biostatistics. But compared to many academic departments like in universities, we do take on more collaborative projects within the institution. And I work a lot together with infectious diseases physicians. So St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, basically it is a pediatric oncology institution. So infectious diseases outcomes were aims. They usually serve as the secondary outcomes in many of the research studies. For example, we always follow patients after they receive, say, bone marrow transplant, chemotherapy or surgery to continuously evaluate their infection risk, trying to catch some of those infections as early as possible so that we can try to avoid severe complications, because some patients, they lived through for example, the surgery or the chemo, but then they eventually died because of the infections. Yeah, because their immune system is very special, immunocompromised. So common virus that they, like the virus we are okay with, they may not, their body may not be okay with that. And currently with the pandemic, we are also monitoring them about the COVID because we have many patients who are not inpatient. They live outside. They still have, like the family, the parents, siblings, they still have some social connections with families, with friends. They are at a little bit higher risk of getting infected with the virus. Although the news always reported that kids are doing better with the COVID, with the SARS-CoV-2 virus in general, but I think that only means the healthy kids, not those cancer kids. So we do a lot of things with infectious diseases, physicians or basic scientists, like the disease surveillance, personalized risk estimation or prediction, and like the vaccine trials. Sometimes we work on that too. So we work on a quite broad spectrum of research projects related to pathogens or all kinds of pathogens that may have an active impact on our patients.
Well, good luck with that work. Personally, I actually have multiple myeloma.
Oh.
I was diagnosed almost, well, a year and a half ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I did an autologous stem cell transplant therapy. And I've been in maintenance for, well, that was 2 years ago, and been in maintenance for a little more than a year and a half. Mm-hmm. And we're dealing with it. I'm very lucky that there are so many good therapies out there.
Yeah, I would say that in the past 20 or 30 years, the cancer therapy has advanced a lot.
Yes, this particular disease, they really know a lot more now than they did 30 years ago. So I'm very lucky that other people have been doing that work. Thank you.
Yeah, we are living in a lucky age than our ancestors, I think.
Okay, well, very nice to talk to you, and good luck to you in your career.
Thank you so much. Very nice to talk to you. Thank you for your time. Bye.
Bye-bye.